What if I told you that the reason you're not where you want to be in life is not a lack of talent, not a lack of intelligence, not even a lack of discipline, but a lack of integration within yourself? What if the real obstacle between you and your next level is not the world outside you, but the parts of you that you refuse to face? Most people spend their lives trying to improve themselves. They read books, they listen to podcasts, they set goals, they try to become more positive, more productive, more confident. But very few people ask a deeper question. What parts of me am I avoiding? Because inside every human being, there are traits that feel uncomfortable. Anger, envy, competitiveness, the desire for power, the need for validation, the hunger to win, the fear of being insignificant. And instead of understanding these traits, most people try to eliminate them. From childhood, you were shaped by approval. When you behaved in ways that made adults comfortable, you were rewarded. When you expressed emotions that were inconvenient, you were corrected. If you were too loud, you were told to calm down. If you were too emotional, you were told to toughen up. If you were too ambitious, you were told not to be selfish. If you were too sensitive, you were told you were overreacting. And slowly, without realizing it, you began to edit yourself. You learned to suppress certain emotions. You learned to hide certain impulses. You learned that some parts of you were acceptable and others were not. The Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung described this hidden psychological territory as the shadow. The shadow is not evil. It is not a moral flaw. It is simply everything about you that you disowned in order to be loved, accepted, or safe. It is the anger you were not allowed to express, the confidence you were told was arrogance, the ambition you were told was selfish, the vulnerability you were told was weakness. But here is what makes the shadow powerful. What you suppress does not disappear. It does not die. It does not dissolve. It goes underground. And when something goes underground in the psyche, it becomes unconscious. And when it becomes unconscious, it begins to influence you without your awareness. Have you ever reacted too strongly to something minor? Have you ever felt irrational jealousy and immediately judged yourself for it? Have you ever been unusually irritated by someone's confidence? Have you ever criticized someone for being attention-seeking only to secretly wish you felt seen? That is not random. That is the shadow expressing itself indirectly. When anger is repressed, it does not vanish. It turns into passive aggression. It turns into sarcasm. It turns into emotional distance. When ambition is denied, it becomes frustration. When jealousy is denied, it becomes quiet resentment. When the need for validation is denied, it becomes hypersensitivity to criticism. The shadow leaks through behavior, and even more subtly, it projects itself onto others. The qualities you strongly react to in other people are often reflections of qualities you have rejected in yourself. The arrogant person triggers you because you never allowed yourself to feel powerful. The selfish person disturbs you because you abandoned your own needs. The bold person intimidates you because you suppressed your own voice. You are not only reacting to them, you are reacting to the parts of yourself that you buried. But here is where everything changes. The shadow is not your enemy. It is energy. Raw, unintegrated, unconscious energy. And energy itself is neutral. It becomes destructive only when it is denied and left unmanaged. When it is acknowledged, understood, and directed, it becomes strength. Think about anger. In its unconscious form, it damages relationships, but when integrated, anger becomes clarity. It becomes the ability to set boundaries. It becomes the courage to say no. It becomes self-respect. Think about ambition. In its unconscious form, it may appear as greed, but when integrated, ambition becomes discipline, vision, persistence, the willingness to endure discomfort for growth. Think about competitiveness. Denied, it may show up as insecurity, but when integrated, it becomes the drive to improve yourself. The goal is not to remove these traits. The goal is to bring them into awareness. When you admit to yourself without shame, "Yes, I feel jealous sometimes," jealousy loses its hidden power. When you admit, "Yes, I want recognition," you stop pretending you are above it, and in that honesty, you regain psychological control. Most people are not failing because they lack potential. They are struggling because they are divided internally. One part of them wants success. Another part feels guilty for wanting more. One part wants to lead. Another part fears criticism. One part wants to be seen. Another part fears exposure. That internal conflict consumes enormous energy. Integration ends the conflict. When you stop fighting your own nature, you become more focused. Your decisions become cleaner. Your confidence becomes less fragile. You stop performing goodness. You stop pretending humility. You stop apologizing for your strengths. And perhaps the most profound truth is this: your shadow often contains your greatest potential. The child who was told they were too loud might actually have been charismatic. The child who was told they were too sensitive might have been deeply empathetic. The child who was told they were too ambitious might have been naturally driven. When you were corrected repeatedly, you did not just modify behavior, you modified identity. And reclaiming identity requires courage. Facing your shadow does not mean acting out your impulses. It means observing them without denial. It means saying, "This is part of me," not to justify it, not to glorify it, but to understand it. Understanding creates choice, and choice creates power. Instead of being unconsciously driven by jealousy, you can channel it into self-improvement. Instead of exploding in anger, you can transform it into assertive communication. Instead of hiding ambition, you can direct it towards meaningful goals. Over time, the parts of you that once felt dangerous begin to feel manageable, familiar, integrated. And here is the paradox: the more you accept your darkness, the less it controls you. What you deny controls you from the shadows. What you acknowledge becomes part of your strength. Your shadow is not a curse. It is unrefined power waiting for direction. It is potential waiting for awareness. It is depth waiting for integration. And when you integrate it, something remarkable happens. You become harder to manipulate, harder to intimidate, harder to destabilize, because you are no longer afraid of yourself. You know your insecurities, you know your desires, you know your flaws. And because you know them, they no longer secretly rule you. That is psychological maturity. That is inner strength. So the question is not whether you have a shadow. You do. Every human being does. The question is whether you are willing to face it, to sit with discomfort, to admit inconvenient truths, to reclaim abandoned parts of yourself. Because when you do, the internal war ends. And when the war ends, energy returns. Clarity sharpens. Confidence stabilizes. You stop shrinking, you stop pretending, you stop fragmenting yourself to fit expectations. You become whole. And a person who is whole does not need to prove their strength. They embody it. Their light becomes brighter, not because they eliminated their darkness, but because they integrated it. And a person who has integrated their shadow is not fragile. They are grounded. And a grounded person is powerful. And a powerful person is unstoppable.